This lecture is going to be about child abuse. So I'm going to be talking about the training and supervision of child abuse issues for managers of early childhood education programs. This is very specific in that you have employees that need to be trained in a specific way about child abuse. This is the same PowerPoint as in 150. So if you've already taken 150, this is the exact same PowerPoint and you don't need to watch it again. If you want to have some review, go ahead, but it is the same PowerPoint. All right, so we're going to talk about the role of the director in child abuse prevention and then also in reporting, how we train staff on child abuse, and then what being a mandated reporter is, and then the overview of the new mandated reporter training that came out in 2017. So why is this important? I know that you've gotten this in all of your other child development classes, but I do think this is one of our most important roles societally. We need to protect the most vulnerable among us, and then also we have a really unique position in that we work so closely with children, young children, who maybe are nonverbal, and we will have the greatest opportunity to see signs of abuse and then call and make that change in the child's life if possible. And many of us have already reported already. So it's really just taking our personal experiences and teaching staff how to do it, especially if you have young staff who have never been mandated reporters, teaching them about these issues. And that in 2007, so more than 10 years ago, but this is the most information I have, is that there were 3 million cases of child abuse reported to authorities in the United States. So 3 million. Children under the age of 4 and those with developmental disabilities are at the highest risk of physical abuse. And that a lot of us are working with our under 4 and under 5. Some of them may be not verbal, have a little bit of verbal skills, or not be able to communicate at all. And so in developmental disabilities, having even less of an ability to communicate what's going on with them. But we know how much we can be in touch and we can know about children without them being verbal. And so we will have the opportunity to see other signs and symptoms of abuse. Administrators, teachers, and programs at a whole level have a legal requirement. So you have to report if you have a suspicion of child abuse. But it's also ethically an imperative. We have to ethically get children out of a bad situation. If we think that they are in an abuse situation, we have to ethically do that. So I'm not going to talk about the signs and symptoms. You know what the signs and symptoms are, and if you don't, then you need to educate yourself. So I'm not going to go over this is the sign of physical, this is emotional. I expect that you know that, and if you don't, you need to do the online training that's through the state of California that I'll talk about, and that will teach you how to do it. So I'm assuming that you know what child abuse is. How do you train your staff about it, and then what do you need to do as far as the online program? So we do know that there's a mandated reporter for child care professionals, and that's online. It's from the state, and you have to have this. Every staff member has to have it by 3/30/18, which is already passed. And then you also need to have any employees within 90 days of employment complete this online training, and then every 2 years after that. So this should be added to your Excel spreadsheet or your whatever kind of file system you have for organizing employee files. And here is a link. It's Child Care Period Mandated Reporter, California.com, and this is where the online training that you have to do and all of your employees have to do. But really, your hiring practices, your policy development, and then any ongoing training of personnel will include protecting children, being mandated reporters, and then making sure that your program limits the accusations of child abuse by parents or those people in the community. So making sure that you have good supervision of your children, you're engaging in positive discipline that doesn't use physical force. So really what this kind of looks like in a program is conducting background checks, live scan, contacting references prior to employment. This is part of limiting those accusations of child abuse by parents in those in the community. Establishing a code of conduct that specifies appropriate versus inappropriate parent, teacher, and child behaviors, and teacher use of guidance and discipline. A discipline policy that clearly outlines for teachers and parents how challenging behaviors will be handled in a positive behavioral way. And then open lines of communication, and that's really important for if teachers suspect child abuse. So the role of the teacher is the boots on the ground. So as a manager, I might not see the physical signs, so I rely on my teachers to see the physical, verbal, emotional sides of a child that might indicate to us that there is child abuse. They are also going to identify it, and then report it to us. And that's where you want to be really clear with your staff. How do you want them to report child abuse to you? In the moment, you know, sometimes I would shut my door if I had a lot of files and anything, but my staff knew that there were situations where I could always be dragged out of any meeting. I will come, if I'm meeting with the state deputy governor, I will still come back to the center if you think that it is child abuse. Like, nothing trumps that. If you think that there is child abuse, I will be in your classroom as soon as I am physically able to be in your classroom. So they need to know that you want to know about child abuse and you want to know about it as soon as possible. You also need to let your staff know that they can identify and report on their own. I have had to do that. I reported once as a teacher. I was really young. I don't know what I would do now. It was a medical neglect case, and that the child was not getting the medical need. The director was working with the family, trying to help with like the financial and the healthcare aspect of it. I felt that it had gone on too far, and that this parent was playing the manager, and so I did report on my own. I don't know. I think that, you know, I'd have to live through the situation again and kind of relive all of those moments. But I do know that the director was trying to do something. I didn't agree, so I called on my own. I had a staff member do that once to me out of professional courtesy, and this is what I wanted. She told me that she was going to do it, that she didn't agree with my decision about if it was abuse or not, and she wanted to call on her own. I supported her, and then that is her right as a mandated reporter in order to do that. So you really need to let your staff know. As soon as you think that there's suspected child abuse, call me and we'll do it. So an example of this is, you know, I had an intercom system and a walkie-talkie in one of my classes, and I remember the teachers, you know, go on the walkie-talkie, hey, can Julie come down to the classroom? And I got there, and they were like, I could tell the vibe of the classroom from the teachers right away. And they're like, hey, could you just talk to so-and-so? And I was like, yeah, sure. It was lunchtime, heading into nap. So I sat down and I had spaghetti and I chatted with everybody. And then all the kids are laying down, and I kind of kept the other child back, and we ate more spaghetti together. And I was like, hey, you know, tell me about your weekend. And he went through that, you know, he threw his food on the table. He slapped his sister. He kicked the dog. He broke the Xbox, like kind of a week of rampage or weekend of rampage. And then he said, on Sunday night, my dad whacked me on the butt. And I said, oh, okay. Can you tell me about that? He's like, yeah, he spanked me because I had yelled at my sister for the last time. I said, okay. Can you tell me anything more about that? And he's like, no. And I'm like, how does your butt feel? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. And I kind of asked a couple more questions and about the weekend and how everything would go. And the teachers heard that, and we all kind of were stifling laughing, and that it seemed like this child had been spanked, and we'll talk more about corporal punishment, but he had been spanked probably after a parent getting to their most frustrated level, probably after breaking the Xbox. So we talked about it as a team, and I said that I didn't think that it was a child abuse, and that maybe we could kind of provide more educational experiences for this family on how to handle frustration, setting up boundaries with children, sibling relationships, and supporting positive sibling relationships. There wasn't so much fighting. This child was the youngest child of much older teenagers, how to kind of support that dynamic in the home. And we all kind of agreed, and we ended up giving some resources to the family to maybe make sure that they didn't feel the need to spank the child in the future. But based on what I had seen and what I had talked to with the child, I didn't think that it was child abuse. In another case, I did have a family call up. Actually, they came home. It was this after-school program. They came into the center, and they gave the child didn't even go into the classroom. I had him sit in my office for a while. He colored with markers, and then based on what the teachers had told me, the after-school teachers, I said, hey, I just need to look at your neck real fast. I heard that maybe something might be going on. You have some bruises. I zipped down part of his hoodie, and I saw that he had been beat with a belt all on the top of his body, and it was an immediate call to Child Protective Services, who came out that night, and the child was not returned to their parent, and they went into foster care that night. I actually never saw that child again. They didn't come back to the center. I never saw the parent. It was really hard to not have the closure in that. And I think that's another point as a role of the director, is that sometimes you have abuse and there's no closure to it. And how do you support your staff that have probably developed a really strong relationship with that child, and that they might never see that child again, or that child goes to a foster home far away, or the parent is upset with you and never brings the child back, there might not be closure. Sometimes we do. Sometimes it's an abuse, but they're able to work with the family. We work with the family. We provide a lot of services, and the parent stops the abuse. Sometimes, though, they get taken away from the home and we don't have that closure. How you do need to support your staff. It's going to take different forms in how you support them. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's having somebody come out and talk to you about it. Maybe it's having a counselor come and talk with the really difficult kind of feelings that come up with child abuse. And I had that at, not in a preschool job, but in my early intervention job, we have somebody who's trained in reflective practice, and they come out every once in a while when we have had big things happen. Like we had a child pass away from a heart condition, and that was really difficult for the staff. I had a mother die from cancer, and when I was helping her child with special needs. And so then they would come out and they would help us process these big kind of feelings as well. So that's one thing you can do as a director. A big thing, and the biggest thing that you can do for your staff, is to train them. So you have to do this online training, and the time has passed, so any new employees need to be trained, and if you haven't gotten pre-existing employees, continue to work on it. The training is fantastic. But being a mandated reporter, employees need to be well informed and participate in regular and ongoing training. So training topics, in addition to the online training they have to do. So this is in addition to that would be, what does the state law say? What are the types of child abuse? What is a teacher's role in reporting? What's identifying community resources that can help you, or social services that can help? Mental health services that are available for families, domestic violence for programs for families, substance abuse, because mental health, domestic violence, and substance abuse are the biggest indicators of the neglect in a child's life. And then children with special needs who are at a greater risk for being abused as well. So these are the types of things that you can train in addition to that online training, because the better prepared your teachers are and the more they know about the subject, the better they're going to be at identifying, and the better they are going to be about telling you, and then you and your team of teachers can protect the children. If your program has volunteers that work with children, they are not mandated reporters, but I believe, this is my own personal belief, that they should be trained alongside teachers in supervision issues, so that they know that they should never be left alone with a child. And then also child abuse as well. Just generally, I think everybody in the community should be made aware of that. Military installations, so if you work on Camp Pendleton or Miramar, you're going to have your own policies, and this involves the military police, which is also known as PML, and then a military chain of command in addition to CPS. So on the military bases, you call CPS, it's its own investigation, and you also have the chain of command, so your commanding officer or anybody above you in the military chain of command is also going to do their own work with the family, and that can take a lot of different cases as well, but CPS is also involved even for base. The biggest thing that I like, and I show this video to all of my Child Development 100, so the introductory class to child development, I always show Shadows to Light, and then the 2016 update, which goes over some more kind of new things. But it's 20-minute long. It gives basic information on child abuse and mandated reporter information. It's definitely a gut punch, because they talk about like children being abused and that gut feeling that you have that you should help them. So I always try to play that 20-minute information because I think it's a great video. And then there's a 4-minute long updated version on YouTube about laws and regulation. You don't have to buy this. It's all on YouTube, and it's all specific to the state of California. You've probably seen it. If it doesn't look familiar to me, you've probably seen it if you work with children. And I think for a good reason, and that it's a good video. Now we have something else. So at the very least, I think they should watch the Shadows and Light video. They should know about what you as a director want to know about child development, like when should I be called, that type of stuff. And then they also have to do this mandated reporter child care online training. So I'm going to go over what's in this. Hopefully you've already done it. Legally, you need to have already done it. Licensing's not going to be happy if you haven't done it. But if you're new to child care, it's fairly long. I'm not going to lie. But there's a home and introduction. I like it in that the first part is overview. It talks about culture and parental risk factors, because I think this is a good overview and a good background into why child abuse happens. Then they talk about protections. If you don't report legally, what's going to happen? Confidentiality, which is huge for educators, that we don't want them to know that we've called them. They can usually piece it together, but they shouldn't know that it was us. Lesson 3, legal and ethical issues, discussing abuse with children, not asking leading questions, not putting ideas in their mind. That's huge as well, as just kind of knowing the facts, not going any deeper, things like that. Then suspected child abuse, working with child welfare services, working with the police, what the central index is. That's kind of the database that tracks child abuse allegations. Lesson 5 is licensing, so very important to us. Red flags, the supervisor's role, which I think is huge, and then safe sleep as well, which is part of abuse as well. Then there's other considerations: domestic violence, substance abuse, homeless children, developmental delays, and strengthening families. So that's an optional section. I think everybody should, and if I was to be training this right now in my classrooms, they would still have to do that. Domestic violence, substance abuse, homeless children, and developmental delays is something that all of us have to deal with. So even if you run a tiny little part-day program, that doesn't mean that just because it's a small program that you're not going to have to deal with these issues. This is pervasive in all parts of our society, and I think everybody should know about that because it's part of protecting the most vulnerable among us and also strengthening families. Then there's a quiz. So if you pass, it gets sent to your email, your teacher prints it off, and you put it in their file. It's really, really easy. So you can either have them do it, you can take them out of the classroom in order to do it. Some places I know have them do it after hours at home. It really depends on you. I think I would probably have my teachers come out and do it. It's paid time that shows my teachers how important I think it is. Like, so important I have subs come in so that you can do this. The good thing about the Mandated Reporter online program is that it's got readings, it's vignettes, there's multiple choice questions throughout that helps reinforce the knowledge that the children that the students, your staff, are learning. And then the optional segments are great, that they focus on parents, they focus on culture, they focus on disabilities, all issues that we need to know about and all issues I would expect my staff to know about. Some of the training issues, as far as I know, it's only in English and Spanish. I hope that they're going to do it in Tagalog, Vietnamese, Korean. We have a lot of different languages in California, but right now it's only in English and Spanish. It's very reading and writing heavy. It's basically reading and writing. There's no pictures, there's no videos. It's slated to take 3 hours. It can take much less than that. I did it just by clicking through because I know a lot of this information. It took me less than an hour. But for my staff, who I want them to understand and retain this, I would expect that it's going to take about 3 hours, and you need to have done it by a couple of months ago. And then for any new staff within 90 days, and then after everybody's been trained every 2 years after that. So every teacher has to complete the quiz and have it emailed and then printed out for their file. You need to keep the dates that your employee completed it in your own records so that you know when the 2 years is up. Same with TB, same with all these other trainings that we, CPR and first aid, things like that. And then I would add to their learning with Shadows to Light. I would have a lecture in a staff meeting. The Chadwick Center actually made this online program, and they are in San Diego County, and you can have somebody from the Chadwick Center or Polinsky, Child Protective Services, or Child Welfare Services. You can contact any of those social services and ask them to come out to your center and to present about child abuse. We had this at a staff meeting. It was fantastic. I learned a lot. We got the opportunity to ask questions. About like, okay, so this is kind of weird that this kid does this. Do you think that this could be ... These are professionals who live and breathe protecting children, and so they have a lot of information. And then watching YouTube videos as well is really helpful. So in conclusion, child abuse identification and reporting is one of the key duties of anyone who works in childcare. It's our moral imperative that we protect children by reporting when we have suspicions of child abuse, and it's our role as a director to support our staff and teach our staff and train our staff so that if they have identified child abuse, that they let you know, so you as a team can then go and you can report it to the relevant authorities and get that child into a better situation. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys online.